Let's start with a little backstory. I'm 24 and I'm in love with national parks. So much so, I decided to work full-time at one for about 3 years. This experience allowed me to meet some great people, but it also welcomed some sketchy individuals. This particular story starts with a man that we'll call Sam. Sam was a tall man with a shaved head and he wore glasses. He was the kind of coworker that would always linger awkwardly. He made everyone feel uncomfortable, but not enough to warrant any concern. The only issue that I really noticed was that he seemed like he had a drinking problem. He would show up to work still drunk and be sent home somewhat regularly. He seemed innocent though, in a socially awkward way. I only worked with him for a few months before I was transferred to another location and was offered a pay raise. A few months after starting the new position, I was in the employee back room browsing my newsfeed when I received 5 messages within a 3-minute time span. I didn't even realize people could type that fast. The messages were from Sam, something that caught me off guard because I had never spoken to him outside of my last position. The messages consisted of vague threats regarding my friends and myself. He seemed upset to find out that I had gay friends and thought I was tainted from association. I was less upset at his foul perception of me and more pissed that he had targeted my friends, who were truly lovely people. I'm bad when it comes to taking the high road and decided to give this man a piece of my mind. We weren't friends, hardly acquaintances, so I didn't feel that his behavior was appropriate, and quite frankly, I was angry. Through our exchange, the original rude context of the messages became obviously threatening. He told me that I should die along with my gay friends, and that he'd be more than happy to end our misery. I was shocked. His anger didn't make sense to me, and I realized that I wasn't going to reason with this lunatic, so I decided to get HR involved. We worked within the same company, so I thought this would be the best route to prevent any further harassment. HR advised me to block contact him while they investigate, but to also alert authorities in case he decided to act out his threats. Authorities were involved and didn't seem too fazed by the messages that I showed them. They almost seemed annoyed that I had bothered calling them in the first place. I filled out a statement and was told to contact them if anything progressed. The next day I woke up to find trash all over my front steps. Odd, but not too strange. I actually thought it was a raccoon since I was in a national park. Then I saw a piece of paper with the words, "Watch your back," scribbled onto it. I looked around the other neighboring cabins to see if anyone was watching, but I didn't see anyone. I cleaned up the mess, but I also saved the note. I wanted to show my sister who lived with me. When she got back home later that morning, I caught her up on the previous night events. She didn't even know Sam, because like I said, we weren't friends. Why would I mention him in my personal life? I gave her a brief description of him in case she saw him lurking around, and headed to work. Halfway through my shift, I get a phone call from Alexa. She sounds shaken. She tells me that the man matching Sam's description came to our cabin and asked about me and where I was. She played dumb and pretended not to even know who I was. And after an awkward silence, he said, "I'll be back to get her later," and walked away. She said he sounded and acted like he had been heavily drinking and had an intense coldness to him. I'm not messing around at this point and have watched enough crime shows to know that you shouldn't underestimate people. I called the company security team and asked to have someone check on my sister and to be escorted home immediately. I'm home within 20 minutes of her phone call. She gave security some more information, and they were able to find out which cabin he resided in. Apparently, he only lived about a 2-minute walk down our street, which was really unnerving. Park rangers are called again and they get more statements from the two of us and decide to pay him a visit. They seem to be taking the situation a bit more serious now, especially since he knows where I live. They come back after talking to his roommate. It's confirmed that he lives there, but hasn't been home since the night before. Authorities put a word out to keep an eye out for Sam. They offer to have a unit keep an eye on us that night, which we gladly accept, and we go to bed. I wake up to 34 messages from an unknown number. It was Sam again. He was very angry that I got HR and the Rangers involved. He said, "You're going to pay for this. You messed with the wrong person, I'll end you." I email HR and present them screenshots of the messages and text. I demand that they resolve this immediately and want to set up a meeting with the director to discuss termination. You see, in national parks, when you're hired, the company provides cheap housing on site. And when you're fired, you have to leave the national park boundaries within 24 hours. So I thought this would solve a majority of my issues. They seem to agree with me and try to locate Sam for a meeting. No one has seen him since the first messages began, 2 days prior. So the park is on a manhunt. The park is huge and it's easy to hide in it if you don't want to be found. Thankfully, his roommate alerted officials when Sam stumbled home drunk the next day. They were able to speak with him and sober him up enough to take him to the HR building a couple hours later. After the meeting, I'm notified that he has been given a first and final write-up and will continue to work and live on my street. He apparently gave a sob story about his personal issues and promises to leave me alone. I was baffled that even with him threatening to kill me, they weren't going to fire him. Thankfully, the Rangers were equally surprised and still offered to provide surveillance just in case. It was quiet for 3 days. I thought it was actually over and started to feel bad for Sam, actually. I thought maybe he was going through some mental issues and I was just his mental punching bag. I didn't agree with it, but I no longer felt as threatened, if that makes sense. That was until I received a knock on my door and opened it to find 2 Rangers wanting to speak to me. According to the Rangers and a few people from the HR department, Sam's roommate had to call the emergency line when Sam started acting bizarre after the meeting. He tried to convince him to lure me to a secluded place so that Sam could take care of me. Thankfully, his roommate wasn't a psycho and reported the situation immediately. Rangers were on site within minutes and had restrained Sam in order to search their cabin for evidence. They ended up finding a loaded firearm and suspected a suicide note that stated he was going to kill me and take his own life. There was plenty of evidence for a case, and he was successfully banned from all national parks in the US. I have since moved to a different state and have changed my contact information. He has since contacted me once to brag about how much I helped him secure unemployment benefits, which I quickly share with the officials. According to officials, he's restricted to a southern Arizona county due to other crimes that he later committed, and I shouldn't worry about him finding me. As for HR, the director actually had to deal with harassment from Sam after the banning and asked me to testify on her behalf if it turned into something more sinister. I haven't heard anything since, so I'm assuming she found another way to stop his assault. I don't understand why he decided to target me. We hadn't had very many interactions, even at work. I have tried to dig through memories to find a single time that I may have invited this kind of behavior, but I'm convinced it was due to many factors, including his instability and alcoholism. Sam, if you're still watching me, let's not meet again. This happened when I was a teenager, living on the outskirts of a Midwestern town with my uncle and his wife. Everything was boring back then, and there was nothing to do for a girl who was homeschooled after her parents passed away. My uncle and aunt were great, as they often left me alone to get wasted. It's funny when I think of it now, because sometimes I broke into their stash and smoked a blunt here and there to pass the time. What I wasn't expecting were the fights that started up after I turned 15. My uncle started wailing on my aunt, but she was a big woman and she gave the same back. They blamed each other about the weed always disappearing, and for the life of me, I didn't know why they never suspected me, but I kept my mouth shut. After a particularly brutal fight one night, I woke up and saw that my uncle wasn't home. My aunt shrugged and said that he finally left her. From then on, it was awesome, even though I missed him. My aunt and I cooked together, shopped together, and we really got to know each other. She even let me move into the abandoned trailer they had at the back of the property so I could have friends over, according to my aunt. I didn't have any friends, so I was kind of pissed with that statement, but still, it was great to have a place of my own at such a young age. The thing was, I could never get used to the smell. My aunt said that it was probably because raccoons or possums nested there until she cleaned it up. After 2 weeks, it got to be too much. I told her the smell shouldn't be building up, that it should have been going away by then. She shrugged and told me to use air fresheners, which only made the stench stronger in my opinion. That was when the nightmare started, where my uncle appeared at the foot of my bed. I'd wake up screaming, but the next night, the same nightmare returned, and each one my uncle was pointing downwards and had blood dripping from the neck down. When I told my aunt, she froze for a second, but then she shook it off and said, I was just experiencing separation anxiety. What happened next still chills my flesh. I was playing with the next door neighbor's dog, who came from a mile away to have me throw a ball for him. The ball rolled under the trailer and the dog went under through a hole. He soon came out without the ball and yelping like he'd been hit with something. I crawled under and saw the ball next to something wrapped in a tarp. Stupid me, I pulled at it. My uncle's face appeared under the flap, frozen in a terrified gasp, with his milky blue wide eyes open and speckled with blood. His neck was gaping and I couldn't stop screaming. I backed out and raced after the dog. When I got to my neighbor's house and told him what happened, a cruel smile spread across his ugly face. He told me that he and my aunt knew that I was the one taking the weed, but it was the perfect opportunity to get rid of my uncle. I swore I'd keep the secret to myself, but I'm waiting for them to pass on before I tell the cops. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. As always, stay spooky.